My name is Bruce Wayne. If you're hearing this, I guess I finally let someone in. This isn't a mission briefing. This isn't strategy. This is something I've never said out loud. It's my story. Before we begin, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. There's a lot more to come. Stories that deserve to be told. Slowly, deeply. Now, let me tell you mine. It starts with a scream. Not mine. My mother's. I was 8 years old. We had just left the Monarch Theater. I remember the film The Mark of Zorro. Black and white. Masked hero, sword in hand. My father, Thomas Wayne, said it was a classic. I didn't understand all of it, but I loved it. I still remember the way my mother laughed when I got excited during the fight scenes. The way my father held her hand, calm and steady. We stepped out into the alley, crime alley, though I didn't know it was called that then. Just a shortcut, just a dark street, just a second of carelessness. That's when I heard the voice, rough, demanding. A man stepped out of the shadows, gun in hand, face half covered, wallets, purse. Now, my father stepped forward. No fear. He reached into his coat pocket, slowly, calmly. My mother held me close. I could feel her heartbeat, racing against mine. There was a flash, a sound like thunder, then another. I saw them fall. My father first, he crumpled with no sound. My mother's scream came next. And then silence. The man ran. I stood frozen. My mother's pearls spilled across the pavement like drops of light in the darkness. I knelt beside them. I didn't cry. Not right away. I didn't scream. I just knelt there. Gotham City didn't feel real after that. It was colder, bigger, hungrier. The police came. Questions were asked. Comfort offered. But I didn't hear any of it. I only heard the sound of the gunshot again and again. They never caught him. Not really. A name came up, Joe Chill. Just a petty mugger. But it didn't matter, because in that moment, Gotham took something from me that it could never give back. I went to live with Alfred. He was our butler. But that word doesn't begin to describe him. He became my guardian, my conscience, the only adult who didn't try to pretend everything was okay. He let me be quiet, let me sit in the dark, let me grieve in my own way. But he also made sure I didn't drown in it. He gave me books, training, discipline. And somewhere in the silence of those early years, I made a decision. I wasn't going to let this happen to anyone else. No child should kneel in their parents' blood. No family should be shattered by one man's fear and a pull of a trigger. I didn't know what that would mean yet. Didn't know what I'd become. But I knew I couldn't be just Bruce Wayne anymore. That night didn't just take my family. It gave me a purpose. And it was only the beginning. I was 13 when I left Gotham. Most people thought I was running. They were right. But I wasn't running away from the city. I was running towards something else. Vengeance wasn't enough. I wanted to be ready. To make good on the vow I made that night. I wouldn't become a soldier. Not a cop. I didn't want permission. I wanted to build something the city had never seen. So I disappeared. No press release. No long goodbye. Just a private jet. A handwritten note to Alfred. And a bag packed with nothing but maps and worn notebooks. I started in the east. Mountains older than history. Villages where the snow didn't melt. I sought out teachers. Masters. The kind who didn't advertise. They found me before I found them. In Bhutan. I lived in a monastery where no one spoke unless they had something worth saying. There I learned patience, to move silently, to listen harder than I spoke. In the mountains of Nepal, I was taught by a man who could fight 10 opponents blindfolded. He taught me how to fall, how to land, how to rise, how to use fear as a weapon. In northern China, I met a woman who had once led a secret war against corrupt generals. She taught me pressure points, how to strike, when to walk away. Years passed like shadows, quick and untraceable. I stopped counting my birthdays. The world became a classroom. Pain was my tutor, failure my syllabus. I studied criminology in Europe under assumed names, learned escape artistry from magicians who didn't believe in anything but the impossible. I tracked poachers through African jungles. I climbed peaks no map dared name. And through it all, I kept Gotham in my mind. Its streets, its screams, its silence. No matter how far I went, it followed me. There was one man, Henry Ducard. French, cold, brilliant, dangerous. He taught me how to track a killer through city fog like a hunter in the wild. He said I was obsessed. I didn't argue. I wasn't trying to be good. I was trying to be prepared. When I wasn't training my body, I trained my mind. I read everything. Law, forensics, philosophy, psychology. I needed to know how people broke, so I could stop it before it happened. I didn't sleep much, didn't trust anyone, except maybe Alfred, who kept sending me letters no matter how often I forgot to reply. He always ended them the same way. Come home when you're ready, Master Wayne. Not a moment sooner. One day I woke up before dawn in the middle of the desert, dust in my teeth, scars on my hands, a fire in my chest, and I realized I was ready, not to return as Bruce Wayne, not to reclaim my name, but to become the thing I had spent a lifetime building in silence. I was coming back to Gotham, not as a boy who lost everything, but as something else, something the city wouldn't see coming. When I returned to Gotham, it didn't welcome me. It never does. The city was darker than I remembered. Or maybe I just saw it more clearly now. The corruption was deeper, the violence more casual, and the people tired. Of fear, of injustice, of hoping someone would change things. I didn't come back with a plan. Not yet. Only a mission. The first few nights I patrolled the city in silence. No name, no costume, just shadows and adrenaline. I stopped 2 muggings, a car theft, and broke up a back alley deal by sheer presence alone. But it wasn't enough. I was strong, trained, invisible. But I wasn't a symbol. They weren't afraid of me. Not yet. I returned to Wayne Manor. The house was cold, empty, the gardens overgrown. The lights hadn't been turned on in years. Alfred greeted me like I'd only been gone a day. He never asked where I'd been, only how long I planned to stay. That night, I sat in the study, staring at the grandfather clock, ticking like it had since I was a child. Behind it I knew was something more. A staircase. A cave. I had fallen into it once. As a boy, a fracture beneath my home, a cathedral of stone and silence. I remember the bats, hundreds of them, screeching, swarming, flying past me like a river of wings. I was terrified. And then years later I understood. That fear, that symbol could be power. So I opened the clock, walked down the steps, and stood in the darkness again. This time I wasn't afraid. I began building, not just a base, an identity. Something that would terrify criminals before I ever laid a hand on them. Something primal. Something born of shadow and memory. It wasn't just a suit. It was armor. Psychological warfare woven into fabric. Kevlar plates. Flexible joints. A cape designed for gliding. Gauntlets reinforced with grappling hooks. EMP bursts. Smoke. The cowl. Black. Horned, faceless, with lenses that turned my eyes into voids. I was no longer a man in the dark. I was the dark. And then, I tested it. The first time I stepped into that suit, it felt like putting on the truth. I wasn't Bruce Wayne anymore. Not fully. I became the whisper behind the criminal's ear. The thing they swore didn't exist. The shadow that watches from the rooftops. I became the Batman. The city didn't know me yet, but it would. You don't forget your first real enemy. Not the street thug. Not the mugger. I mean the first one who saw you. The first one who understood what you were trying to do and tried to tear it all down. His name was Roman Sionis. The Black Mask. Back then he wasn't a household name. Not yet, but in Gotham's underworld everyone knew him. A crime boss. Young, violent, and unpredictable. He ran a trafficking ring through the Narrows, kids mostly. People no one missed until I came along. I'd only been operating for a few weeks. Silent takedowns. Crates full of weapons intercepted. My name was just a rumor then. Whispers in the alley. A shadow with fists. But Roman didn't believe in shadows. He believed in control. He made an example of a young boy I'd saved just days before. Hung him from a streetlight in Robinson Park. No name. No note. Just a black mask painted over his face. That night I made a mistake. I didn't plan. Didn't gather intel. I stormed Roman's warehouse in full armor, full rage. There were over 20 men inside. I took out 7 before they even drew their weapons. But the 8th got a lucky shot. My left shoulder numbed instantly. I kept moving. Pain wasn't new, but it slowed me. I cornered Roman in the upper office. He was waiting. He laughed. Not scared. Not surprised. Like he'd been expecting me. "You think a costume makes you more than a man?" he said. "No," I answered. "It reminds me that I'm not." We fought. No weapons. Just fists. He was stronger than I expected. Sloppier. But meaner. We crashed through a glass wall. Fell 2 stories. I landed hard, ribs cracked. Roman rolled. Disappeared into the smoke. By the time I pulled myself up, he was gone. Vanished into the city. I'd won the fight. Stopped the shipment. Freed the kids. But I hadn't beaten him. Not yet. That night I returned to the cave, bleeding. Alfred stitched me up in silence. When he finished, he poured a drink. And he said, "So it begins." He was right. That was the first time I bled for Gotham. Not the last. Not even close. Roman escaped. But he didn't forget me. And I didn't forget him. In a way, we made each other. The first time I heard someone whisper my name on the street, I was perched on the edge of a rooftop above Burnley. 2 teenagers, just kids. One of them had tried to snatch a purse. The other stopped him. "Don't," he said, "the bat'll get you." He said it like it was a ghost story. Like I wasn't real. I remember smiling. Just a little. That's when I knew it was working. You can't protect a city with brute force alone. There are too many alleys, too many secrets. I needed something bigger than myself. A symbol, a story. So I fed the myth. I left criminals tied up where cops would find them, with calling cards shaped like bats. I vanished into smoke, just before reporters could catch a glimpse. I staged moments, made them see me even when I wasn't there. Sometimes I'd just glide past a group of gang members, not even engaging, just enough for them to see the cape, let them imagine what I could do. Fear did more than fists ever could. Words spread like rot in the walls. The bat was real. He didn't talk. He didn't bleed. He saw you even in the dark. Cops weren't sure what to make of me. Some wanted to arrest me. Some quietly looked the other way. And a few started leaving files where I could find them. Lieutenant James Gordon was one of those. He didn't trust me at first, but he trusted what I was trying to do. And in Gotham, that was enough. One night I left a note on the hood of his squad car. No signature, just building something. You'll know when it's ready. He never said anything, but he stopped trying to chase me. Instead, he started watching the rooftops. That month, crime in the Narrows dropped by 18%. A coincidence? Maybe, but I don't believe in coincidences. The symbol was working. People didn't know who I was, didn't know what I wanted. They only knew something was out there, watching, something they couldn't buy, or bribe, or run from. And the city, it started to feel less hopeless, just a little. It wouldn't last. But in those early nights, When the wind was quiet and the sirens were far away, I felt like I was becoming exactly what I needed to be. Not Bruce, not a boy, not a victim. I was the shadow in the dark. I was the whisper in the alley. I was Batman. Some people say the Joker just appeared like lightning from a clear sky. But that's not true. There was a build-up, a pattern. We just didn't see it. Bodies started showing up in Gotham's East End, grins carved into their cheeks, faces locked in laughter, not smiles, contortions, like they died in the middle of a joke they didn't understand. The GCPD had no leads. Gordon was already under pressure. They wanted a scapegoat. They wanted Batman. I followed the trail, carefully, quietly. This wasn't the mob, wasn't revenge. It was something else. I found a lead at an abandoned chemical plant on the edge of the river. Axis Chemicals. A place long shut down, left to rot. Inside I found a man waiting. Pale skin, green hair, a suit that looked like it belonged on a game show host from a fever dream. And the laugh. It wasn't human. It echoed through the rafters, high and manic, like he knew something I didn't, and never planned to share. "You must be him," he said. "The bat, the big bad bat. Tell me, do you bleed or do you just brood?" He moved like a dancer, or a snake, unpredictable, fast. He didn't fight to win. He fought to entertain. He pulled out a gun. I dodged. It fired a flag with the word "bang" on it. Then the flag launched a real bullet. I wasn't laughing. We fought. I tried to subdue him. He bit me. He bit me. He didn't care about didn't care if he won or lost. He just wanted chaos. A performance. Before I could detain him, he dropped a smoke bomb and leapt into a vat of chemicals. Gone. The next time he showed up, it was at the Gotham Museum, then a hospital, then a live broadcast. Each time he got more elaborate, more violent, and somehow, more charismatic. The city didn't know what to make of him. Neither did I. He called himself the Joker, a joke only he understood. He called me the straight man, said every circus needs one. And I realized something. This wasn't a criminal. This was an ideology, a force dedicated to unraveling everything I stood for. Not for power, not for money, but just because he wanted to pull me into the chaos, to prove that all it takes is one bad day. I've had that day, but I didn't break. And from that moment on, he couldn't stop trying. That was the first encounter, and it would never be the last. After the Joker, things changed. The city didn't sleep anymore. Not really. Not peacefully. Before, there had been rules, even among criminals, territories, boundaries, but chaos doesn't play by rules. And Joker gave chaos a name, a face, a laugh. Other criminals started stepping out of the shadows, copycats, freaks. It was like I'd disturbed something ancient, and now the cracks in Gotham were wide open. The Falcone and Maroni crime families began to collapse under the pressure, and in that void, new threats were born. Oswald Cobblepot, the Penguin, ran arms and information from the Iceberg Lounge, smiling through a monocle like a mobster out of time. Dr. Jonathan Crane, the Scarecrow, used toxins to twist fear into madness, and Edward Nygma, the Riddler, obsessed with proving he was smarter than everyone, especially me. Each of them brought something different: violence, intelligence, narcissism, terror. And me, I became something different too. I stopped pulling punches. I stopped explaining myself. I stopped hoping Gotham would thank me. I started winning. But I started losing something else. I went days without sleep, weeks without speaking to anyone but Alfred. I broke ribs and didn't treat them. got stabbed in the thigh and kept moving. The line between Batman and Bruce Wayne blurred, then faded entirely. Alfred noticed first. He told me I was losing myself, that I was becoming the very thing I swore to fight. I didn't argue, didn't say anything, because he was right. But the city needed me. It was drowning, and no one else could swim this deep. So I pressed on, faster, harder, quieter. My nights became war. Each rooftop, a battlefield. Each scream, a signal. Each scar, a reminder. People began to ask, who's protecting us from him? And part of me didn't care, because the city was safer. But it came at a price, and that price was me. It started with a diamond. The Gotham Museum of Antiquities. A silent alarm triggered just after midnight. I arrived before the police, entered through the skylight. No glass disturbed, no signs of forced entry. But the case was open, empty, and the motion sensors bypassed. Whoever did it was good. I caught a glimpse of her on the rooftop, sleek black suit, eyes glowing behind tinted goggles. She moved like smoke, elegant, precise, uncatchable. When I landed in front of her, she didn't flinch. "Nice ears," she said. I didn't respond. She stepped closer. The diamond in her hand sparkled under the moonlight. Let me guess. Strong, silent type. I went to disarm her. She was faster. We fought, if you could call it that. More like dancing with knives. She knew every step before I made it. Then she vanished. One leap, a crack of her whip gone into the night. She called herself Catwoman. And from that night forward, she was everywhere. Not just in my patrol rides. In my thoughts. She wasn't like the others. She didn't want to rule Gotham or destroy it. She just lived in it. Moved through it. Stole from it when it suited her. But never cruelty. Never chaos. There was a line she didn't cross. And maybe that's why I let her go. More than once. She made things complicated. I trusted few people. Let even fewer get close. But Selina, she saw me. Not the cape. Not the mask. Me. We met often by accident. By design. On rooftops, in alleys. In stolen moments between chaos. Sometimes she helped me. Sometimes she vanished with a smirk. And every time I told myself this was the last. But she kept coming back, and I kept letting her. One night she said, "You and I were the same. Just strays pretending we're still part of the world." I didn't answer, but I thought about it for a long time. Maybe we were. Maybe that's why I never caught her. Maybe I didn't want to. I never planned to take anyone in. Not into the cave. Not into the fight. Not into this life. But fate doesn't care about plans. Sometimes, it just drops a boy into your world. His name was Richard Grayson, but everyone called him Dick. He was young, maybe 10, a circus kid, part of a family act, the Flying Graysons. I watched them once, graceful, fearless, smiles that lit up the tent, until one night, a cable snapped, and everything fell. His parents died in front of him, the way mine had, in a crowd, under lights, with no one to stop it. I didn't think, I acted, paid for his care, made sure the circus couldn't cover it up. And when the system failed, as it always does, I brought him to Wayne Manor. Alfred wasn't sure, neither was I, but there was something in Dick's eyes, not just pain, purpose. He wanted to understand, wanted to fight. At first I kept him out, shielded the cave, the patrols, the suit, but he was relentless, smart, and so much like me it scared me. Eventually I trained him, not because I wanted a partner, but because I knew he'd find the shadows with or without me. I taught him everything. how to move without being seen, how to read people, how to listen in silence. He was quicker than I expected, more agile, braver than he had any right to be. But he wasn't like me. Where I was driven by pain, he fought with hope. He smiled in the middle of the chaos, laughed when we stopped a robbery in time. He enjoyed being a hero. I called him Robin, because he brought light into the cave, and because he'd earned it. Together, we changed Gotham's rhythm. Two silhouettes on the rooftop now, two capes in the night, and for the first time in a long time, I wasn't alone. I never expected to become a father. Mentor, maybe. Protector, always. But a father, that was something else. That was personal, vulnerable, and yet somewhere between teaching Dick how to disarm a thug and helping him finish his algebra homework, it happened. I became more than Batman. I became his. Raising him wasn't easy. He challenged me in ways no criminal ever could. He asked questions. Why do we hide who we are? Why do we never really talk to people? Why can't we just trust the police? Hard questions, fair questions. He had a way of seeing the world that I'd forgotten. Through him, I remembered that not everything had to be cloaked in fear. We argued. He broke protocol. He jumped in too fast, too loudly, but always with heart. And sometimes he'd make me laugh. Truly laugh. The kind of laugh I thought Gotham had beaten out of me. I wasn't always a good teacher. There were nights I was too hard on him. Times I expected him to think like me. Forget that he wasn't driven by the same scars. But he never gave up. On the mission. On Gotham. On me. One night we stood on the clock tower overlooking downtown. He said, "Do you think I'll ever be as good as you?" I looked at him and said, "You already are, in the ways that matter most." He smiled, and I knew in that moment he'd be more than a partner. He'd be a legacy. And one day when I'm gone, the city won't go dark, because Robin will still be there, with heart, with light, with the same vow I made long ago, but lived out with hope instead of fear. That was the first time I believed Gotham might actually heal, because someone better than me was watching over it too. You can't save a city like Gotham. Not in the way people mean it. You manage it. Hold it together at the seams. But every time you fix one hole, three more tear open. And what comes through wears a face. A mask. The more visible I became, the more theatrical my enemies became. It was like my presence gave them permission to become monsters. Scarecrow's fear toxin evolved. More potent. More personal. One dose made an entire subway station attack itself. Each rider convinced the others were demons. Two-Face returned. Harvey Dent, once the city's best hope for justice, now a broken man with a coin and a gun, leaving life to chance. Even the Riddler changed. His puzzles turned darker, deadlier. A hostage tied to each unsolved riddle. And the Joker. He just escalated. He poisoned the reservoir, turned the river green, and filled it with his laughter. Not a metaphor, actual laughter. Piped through the water system like a virus. He left a note. "Smile, Bats. You're making me better every day." And he was right. The darker they got, the harder I had to fight to stay one step ahead. I upgraded the suit, built new vehicles, refined the tech. Robin and I trained constantly. New formations, contingency plans, escape drills. Because one mistake in Gotham doesn't cost you a second chance. It costs lives. But sometimes, even that isn't enough. One night, we stopped a bomb from leveling Midtown. I disarmed it with 2 seconds left, and yet the real target had been across the city. A hospital wing full of children, wired to blow on a backup trigger. The Joker called it his insurance plan. We stopped both. Barely. But the damage was done. Not to buildings, to faith. People started looking at the bat signal differently. Not as a promise, but a warning. And that's when I realized the rogues didn't want to destroy Gotham. They wanted to reshape it into something as broken as they were. And I was the glue, holding the madness together. But for how long? I used to think discipline could solve everything. That if I trained hard enough, planned far enough, stayed sharp enough, I could hold everything together. But people aren't machines. They feel, they grow, and eventually they leave. Robin, Dick, he was never meant to stay a sidekick forever. But I didn't see it coming. I started noticing it during patrols. He was slower to follow orders, took risks he didn't used to, spoke out, questioned my decisions. One night he let a suspect go, said the man wasn't the enemy, said we needed to show compassion sometimes, that I needed to. I didn't yell, but I didn't agree. I told him we don't make deals with chaos. We end it. He shook his head. You're not ending it. You're feeding it. One shadow at a time. That cut deeper than any knife ever has. A few weeks later he didn't show up for patrol. Alfred handed me a note. I need to find out who I am when I'm not in your shadow. Thank you for everything. But I have to go. He left the suit, left the comms, left the cave. I stood in the dark longer than I should have that night. Tried to tell myself it was for the best, that this was what I'd trained him for. But the cave never felt emptier. Not after my parents. Not after Jason. Not after anyone. Just then. Alfred said you didn't lose him. He's just becoming. And he was right. In time Dick became Nightwing. Built a city of his own. Blazed his own trail. Better than me in more ways than he knows. But back then, it felt like failure. Not because he left but because I realized I didn't know how to let him. I wasn't just losing a partner. I was losing a son, and that hurt more than I ever admitted out loud. After Dick left, I told myself I didn't need another partner. I'd work alone, colder, sharper, efficient. But the city, it has a way of pulling people into your orbit, even when you try to push them away. His name was Jason Todd. I caught him trying to steal the Batmobile's tires. The tires, not run from it, not vandalize it, steal them. He didn't flinch when I dropped down in front of him, didn't run, didn't beg. He just looked up and said, "Nice ride." Handles like it's rear heavy though. He was fire, all instinct and fists, angry at the world, and willing to punch anything that looked back at him the wrong way. I should have walked away. Instead, I took him in, trained him, channeled the rage, tried to teach him balance, control. But Jason wasn't like Dick. He didn't fight with hope. He fought to hurt the people who hurt others. And sometimes he scared me. Still, I saw myself in him. A version of me without Alfred, without a tether. So I kept him close, called him Robin. And for a time it worked. Until it didn't. He learned his mother might still be alive, left without permission to find her, tracked her to the Middle East. By the time I caught up, it was too late. The Joker found him first, lured him into a trap, beat him, tortured him, left him in a warehouse with a bomb. I was minutes too late. I remember the sound. I remember the fire. I remember the silence that followed. And the empty space where Jason should have been. There was no body left to bury. Just ash. And a broken man standing in the rubble. That night something in me cracked. I didn't speak for days. Didn't patrol. Didn't breathe. I just stared at the Robin suit I kept in the cave. And I asked myself, was this my fault? Had I made him into a soldier when he was just a child? Was the mission worth this? Jason was gone, and I couldn't stop hearing the Joker's laugh in the flame. After Jason, I stopped speaking. Not just to Alfred, to myself. The cave became quieter than ever. I stopped turning on the lights. The computers stayed dark. The suits gathered dust. And the city kept moving. I patrolled. Of course I did. But I wasn't fighting crime. I was avoiding grief. There's a numbness that settles in when you've lost too much. Like your soul has frostbite. You still feel the pressure of pain, but never the sharpness. I remember standing on the edge of Wayne Tower one night, looking down, not thinking of jumping, just wondering how far I'd fallen already. Alfred tried. He always does. He left food at the top of the cave stairs, left notes instead of conversations, never pushed. Until one night he finally said he wasn't a soldier, Master Wayne. He was a boy. And he was loved. I didn't answer because I didn't know how. I blamed myself. Not the Joker. Not fate. Me. I'd taken in a broken kid and given him a war. And that war killed him. I built a memorial. Jason's suit mounted behind glass. Blood-stained. Unwashed. A reminder. Of failure. Of consequence. Of what happens when you confuse vengeance for justice. And I stopped taking in partners. No more Robins. No more sons. Just the mission. Just the silence. For a while that was enough. Until it wasn't. I thought I was invisible. That I could disappear into the work. That the cowl and the cape would keep everyone away. But then, a boy found me. His name was Tim Drake. And he wasn't like the others. He wasn't angry. He wasn't broken, he was curious. Tim had been there the night Dick Grayson's parents died. He remembered the boy who became Robin. He watched the circus act, remembered the acrobat's movements. Then years later he saw Robin flip through the air beside Batman and recognized the same motions. He figured out everything, not just me, not just Dick. He pieced together the entire puzzle, at 13. And then, he showed up in the cave. No fear, no stammering. He stood straight, looked me in the eye and said, "You need a Robin." I told him no, that Robin was gone. That it wasn't a mantle to wear like a costume, it was a life. He didn't argue. He waited, showed up again and again, leaving intel, tips, leads I'd missed. He wasn't trying to impress me. He was trying to help. Alfred liked him immediately. "He's not chasing your shadow," he said. "He's trying to hold it still." Eventually, I let him in, trained him, carefully, reluctantly. He wasn't like Jason. He wasn't like Dick. He was something new, focused, disciplined, strategic. Tim thought 3 moves ahead, even when he was afraid. He became Robin, not because he needed it, but because I did. He reminded me that the mission was about more than loss. It was about preventing it, saving people before they shattered. He wasn't there to replace Jason. He was there to make sure there wouldn't be another Jason. And in time, I trusted him, with the suit, with the cave, with my life. Tim Drake didn't just step into the legacy, he evolved it. And for the first time in years, I let hope in again. It started with a whisper, a name spoken through the criminal underground like a warning. Bane. I didn't take it seriously at first. Gotham has seen monsters, giants, freaks, warped minds in clown paint. But Bane wasn't like them. He didn't want attention. He didn't want chaos. He wanted to win, and he planned for it. He watched me, studied me. He knew everything, my patrol patterns, my weaknesses, the way I favored my left when my right shoulder flared up. And then, he set his plan in motion. One night, Arkham Asylum erupted. Every cell unlocked, every criminal loose, Joker, Scarecrow, Firefly, Riddler, Two-Face. All of them, at once. It was a gauntlet. A test. I didn't sleep, didn't eat. Days without rest, running on pain, adrenaline, and obsession. Tim begged me to slow down. Alfred warned me I was unraveling, but I wouldn't stop. I couldn't. That's exactly what Bane wanted. When I finally stumbled back into the manor, suit torn, muscles torn worse, he was waiting, not in the shadows, not with an ambush. Sitting in my chair. Calm, like he owned the place. He stood as I entered the cave, towering, built like something grown in a lab, not born. But his eyes, they were sharp, intelligent. I am here to break you, he said. And then he did. The fight wasn't fair. It wasn't meant to be. I gave him everything, every last ounce of strength, every trick, every tool, and he endured all of it. Then he lifted me, above his head, like a trophy, like a warning, and he broke my back. The crack echoed through the cave, through my bones, through everything I believed I was. He dropped me, walked away, left me alive, because death wasn't the punishment, helplessness was. I lay there for hours before Alfred found me. I don't remember the pain, just the stillness. The city kept burning, and I couldn't stop it, because I wasn't Batman anymore. I was just a broken man in the dark. Recovery isn't a straight line. It's not heroic. It's not dramatic. It's hours of silence, inches of progress, and the aching weight of uselessness. Alfred did everything: surgeons, therapy, support. Even then, the prognosis wasn't good. My spine was broken. My city was breaking, and I couldn't stand. But Gotham wouldn't wait for me. The bat signal still lit the sky. Crime still screamed through the alleys. And Bane, he ruled the streets like a king in iron. Something had to be done. And so I made a choice. His name was John Paul Valley. He was part of an ancient order, the Order of Saint Dumas, trained in secrecy, built for war. He wasn't ready. He wasn't stable. But he was all I had. I gave him the suit, not the legacy, not the trust, just the tools. He became Batman. But not my Batman. He was violent, aggressive, unforgiving. Criminals ended up in traction instead of handcuffs. He built a new suit, mechanized, armored, brutal. He was winning, but he was losing himself. And Gotham knew. They feared him. Not the way they feared me. Not with respect, with panic. Tim tried to reason with him. Alfred pleaded. But John Paul was unraveling. The line I'd spent years walking between justice and vengeance. He crossed it every night. And still, I watched from the cave, trapped in my body, trapped in my failure. I had handed over the symbol, and he was turning it into a weapon. One night, he let a criminal fall, didn't save him, didn't try. That was the moment I knew. I had to return, not just to fight, not just to reclaim the mantle, but to remind Gotham what Batman really is. Not brutality, not fear alone. Discipline, purpose, hope in shadow. I stood up for the first time in months, and I began the climb back, not just into the suit, but into the mission. I didn't rush back into the suit. I couldn't. Not because I wasn't ready, but because the city wasn't ready to trust me again. Jean Paul had scorched the symbol. People feared the bat like they feared a storm. No guidance, no reason, just violence. If I was coming back, I had to rebuild the meaning behind the cowl. First, I rebuilt my body. Every nerve screamed. Every step was a challenge. But pain was a language I understood, and I had learned to speak it fluently. Alfred supported me, quietly, constantly. Tim helped too. He never said it, but I could see it in his eyes. We need you. I retrained. In the shadows of the cave, with the lights off, back to basics. Every stance, every throw, every fall. I had to earn it all over again. Then I made the call. I confronted Jean-Paul. He was waiting. The suit he wore was a monstrosity now, metal, flame, rage. He wasn't Jean-Paul anymore. He was the bat in his mind. But he was wrong. Batman isn't fury, it's control. We fought in the cave. The very place I built this legacy and nearly watched it die. He was faster, stronger, but I knew the shadows better. I knew myself. I stripped the armor away, piece by piece, blow by blow, until he stood in front of me, bare, trembling. And I said nothing, because I didn't need to. He left on his own, ashamed, afraid of what he had become. I didn't hate him. He was a lesson, one I would never forget. That night, I stood before the suit, the real one, mine. Not a weapon, not a throne, a vow. I put it on again, not to punish Gotham, not to reclaim my name, but to remind the city, and myself, what Batman means. When I put the cowl back on, Gotham didn't cheer. It didn't breathe a sigh of relief. It watched, cautious, wounded, waiting to see which Batman I was bringing back. I moved through the city like a ghost. No press, no signals, just rooftops and whispers. Criminals were confused. Was it the armored one? The brutal one? No, it was me. I made sure they knew. Took down a weapons ring on the docks, quietly, cleanly. Rescued 2 hostages from a burning church. Left without a word. Intercepted a shipment of venom, the drug Bane used to amplify his strength before it ever reached the streets. One night I left a message carved into concrete. The real one is back. Tim was there through it all. I trusted him now in a way I hadn't before. Not as a student, as a partner. And Alfred, he said something I never expected. You're smiling more. Or at least, something close. He wasn't wrong. I'd been broken, and I had rebuilt. Not just my body, my belief. In the mission, in the symbol, in the idea that even in Gotham, good can stand tall. The city started responding. The fear that had clouded the streets began to lift. Not disappear. Never that. But it lessened. The people started looking at the sky again. The bat signal meant something again. Not terror, protection. I returned to the cave one night, suit torn, but spirit intact. I looked up at the suit behind glass. Jason's suit. I stood there a long time, and I whispered, I'm sorry. I should have been better. The silence that followed felt lighter. Gotham hadn't healed, but it hadn't died, and neither had I. The bat was back, and this time he remembered who he was fighting for. I first saw the new suit when I wasn't meant to. Blue, sleek, sharp. Not mine. It moved like the man wearing it had stopped trying to be me, and finally became himself. Nightwing. Dick had returned to Gotham, not as Robin, not as my partner, but as something more. A protector of Bloodhaven, a symbol of his own making. When I saw him glide across the rooftops again, for a second, just a second, I forgot how far we'd come. He landed beside me on a rooftop overlooking Crime Alley. We didn't speak at first, just stood in silence, looking down at the place where it all began. Then he said, "You look older." I said, "You look like you finally stopped trying to impress me." He smirked, and in that moment, everything that hadn't been said between us was understood. He had built something I never could. A life, one with friends, a team, a city that respected him, people who saw him not as a shadow of Batman, but as Nightwing. He fought differently now, with purpose, with heart. But he still held the line, and he still called me when things got heavy. One night we stood on opposite sides of a rooftop mid-mission. I said, "You don't have to be here." He answered, "You don't always have to be alone." And maybe, he was right. I spent so long believing pain was the price of the mission, that solitude was necessary, that legacy was a burden, not a gift. But watching Dick, I saw the truth. Legacy is what survives us, what we pour our values into, what continues, even when we're gone. Nightwing didn't just carry on the mission, he elevated it. He taught me that there was more than one way to be the Bat, and more than one way to save a city. I was never meant to work on a team.
Not really.
I was built for alleys, for corners of cities most people refuse to walk through, for shadows and silence. But then, the world started ending. And silence wasn't enough. Superman called first. He never says much when it's urgent. Just, "We need you." That was enough. The League had reassembled. Wonder Woman, Flash, Aquaman, Martian Manhunter, Hawkgirl, and Clark. Old friends, sometimes rivals, always soldiers when the world goes dark. The threat was alien, apocalyptic, dark side. I'd read the files, watched transmissions, calculated probabilities, and none of them looked good. But the League didn't need my fists. They needed my mind. We built plans, countermeasures, fallback positions, and when the skies burned red, we were ready. We fought together, gods and mortals, my suit reinforced with energy dampeners, my tools upgraded, every moment balanced on a razor's edge. I couldn't fly, I couldn't move mountains, but I found the codes that shut down the death machines. I hacked apocalyptic systems mid-battle. I made sure the others could keep fighting. And when Superman fell crippled by kryptonite gas, I carried him off the battlefield. He said, "Didn't think you did heavy lifting." I said, "Only when it matters." We won. Barely. Darkseid was pushed back. For now. Afterward, the League asked me to stay, to rebuild the Watchtower, to help lead. I declined. Gotham needed me. But I left something behind. A fail-safe. Just in case the gods ever forgot what humans were capable of. I am not their equal. Not in strength. Not in speed. But I see things they don't. And when the world falls apart, sometimes you need a man who's already lived in the ruins. I had accepted Jason's death. I hadn't moved on. But I had built my life around the hole he left. His suit stayed in the cave. His name remained in silence. A wound I stopped trying to close. Then, the rumors started. A masked vigilante, moving through the city like a ghost with a gun. He didn't just fight criminals. He executed them. Clean shots. Precision. No mercy. The underworld called him the Red Hood. The name meant nothing at first. Just another shadow trying to fill the space I left open. Until one night, he spoke. I had him cornered in an old chemical plant, the same place where I first met the Joker. He stood in the dark, helmet gleaming, voice modulated, cold. "You never killed him," he said. After what he did to me, you let him live. And in that instant, I knew. Jason, alive, changed. Not a boy anymore. Not Robin. He removed the helmet. And it wasn't a trick. Not a copy. Not an illusion. It was him. Resurrected through something unnatural. Broken by it. Reforged by pain and rage. I died screaming, he told me. And you let him laugh about it. I didn't have words. Because there were none. He'd come back but wrong. He wasn't seeking justice. He wanted revenge. Not just on the Joker. On me. We fought. It wasn't about skill. It was about grief. Two people trying to make sense of a loss that never made sense. He held a gun to the Joker's head. Tossed me another. Do it, he said. End it. Or I will. I couldn't. Not because the Joker didn't deserve it. But because if I crossed that line, there'd be no coming back. Jason pulled the trigger. The gun clicked. Empty. It wasn't about killing. It was a test. One I failed. He left, didn't look back. And I stood there. Between the man who ruined him. And the boy I couldn't save. The Red Hood still roams the city. Sometimes an enemy. Sometimes an ally. Always a reminder. That even when you bring someone back, you don't always bring them home. There was a time when I believed my greatest threats came from outside. Criminal empires, monsters, cosmic tyrants. But I was wrong. The worst battles are fought inside the family. After Jason returned as the Red Hood, the Bat family started to fracture. Lines blurred, arguments turned to silence, silence turned to scars. Dick wanted to bring Jason back in, said he just needed time, that we could heal him. Tim didn't agree, said Jason's methods were crossing lines we couldn't afford to ignore. Barbara, Oracle, watched from the periphery. Always watching, always calculating. And me. I stood in the center, trying to hold everything together with nothing but broken promises. Jason operated in my city, taking down crime, yes, but with bullets, with blood. And he was good, too good. He started drawing crowds, influence, the kind of presence Gotham hadn't seen since the early days of the Bat. Some began to see him as the real protector, the one who didn't hold back. Gangs started aligning. Territories were split. Even the police weren't sure who to trust anymore. One night, Dick confronted him on the docks. Words turned to fists. Fists turned to fire. And I arrived just in time to pull them apart. You think you're better than me? Jason shouted. No, Dick said. I think you used to be. Jason vanished into the smoke. Again. I stood there between two people I raised, two people I failed in different ways. And I realized, the symbol I created had multiplied, and each one of them wore it differently. Hope, discipline, rage, and none of them were wrong. But together, we were tearing Gotham in half. I called them in. All of them. We sat in the cave in silence. I didn't lecture, didn't order. I simply said if this family breaks apart, Gotham won't survive what comes next. They stayed, not because I demanded it, but because deep down, we all knew the truth. We need each other, even when it hurts. I thought I knew Gotham. Every alley, every backroom deal, every face the city tried to hide. But then I heard the rhyme. Beware the court of owls that watches all the time, ruling Gotham from a shadowed perch, behind granite and lime. It was a children's poem, something whispered on playgrounds. A fairy tale, until the fairy tale tried to kill me. It started with a murder, a prominent politician, one with ties to Wayne Enterprises. No signs of struggle, no DNA, just a feather on the body, then another, and with each body, a whisper, they are always watching. I followed the trail, old buildings, forgotten tunnels, clues buried beneath Gotham's foundations, literally, until one night, I walked into a trap, a maze, hidden beneath the city, lit by gaslight, watched by marble statues that seemed to breathe. I wandered for days. Time bled together. There was no sunlight, no way out. Then came the Talon. A man. No, not a man. A weapon, cold, precise, trained for one thing: to erase. We fought. I was starving, weak. He didn't tire. I barely escaped. Crawled through stone and blood until I found daylight again. And when I returned to the cave, I realized I had been wrong. The court wasn't a myth. They were real, ancient, hidden, ruling Gotham from behind masks and gold. They didn't want power. They were power, and I, Bruce Wayne, was a threat to that. They sent Talons after me, after Alfred, after Nightwing. They infiltrated everything, but we fought back. One by one, we exposed them, unmasked them, destroyed their holdings, but we never found them all, because the court doesn't live above ground. It waits, and I still feel them, sometimes, when I walk through the oldest parts of the city, when the wind shifts just right. The owls are still watching, and I keep the light on in the cave just a little longer now. He arrived at the manor unannounced. 12 years old, dark eyes, silent steps, and a sword in his hand. "I am Damien," he said. "Your son." I didn't believe it. Couldn't. But the tests were conclusive. Talia al Ghul, daughter of Ra's, had kept a secret. A child, trained from birth by the League of Assassins. My child, Damien. He was precise, disciplined, deadly. He could recite Sun Tzu from memory, break a man's wrist without hesitation, and yet he didn't know how to be a boy. No cartoons, no sports, no fear, only the mission, only honor. He viewed Gotham as a battlefield, crime as a disease to be purged. And he looked at me, not as a father, as a test. The first time he stepped into the cave, he called it inefficient, said the technology was outdated, asked why I hadn't simply eliminated the Joker. He wasn't asking, he was challenging. At first I kept him out of the field. Too dangerous, too unstable. But he didn't listen. One night I found him wearing the Robin suit. Modified, armored, personalized. He'd gone out on patrol and left 6 criminals unconscious in the street, with broken bones and severed tendons. I grounded him. He challenged me to a duel. I refused. He called me weak. But beneath all that rage was a boy who had never been hugged, never been told "I'm proud of you," never been given a choice. I didn't need another soldier. I needed to teach my son how to live. And slowly, he started to change. Not overnight, not cleanly, but moments came. A joke, a hesitation before a punch, a genuine smile when Alfred baked something extra sweet. He was still a storm, but one learning to control his thunder. I didn't raise him, but I could guide him now, and for the first time since I was a boy, I saw the chance to heal what the world had broken in me, through him. Training Damien wasn't just about molding a Robin, it was about protecting him from what made him. The League of Assassins, Ra's al Ghul, Talia. They didn't forget, they never forget. And taking Damien from them, that was a declaration of war. The first strike came without warning, explosions beneath Wayne Tower, coordinated attacks on GCPD armories, encrypted messages embedded in the city's electrical grid, messages only I could decode, and each one ended the same way: return the heir. Talia arrived, not as a mother, not even as an assassin, but as an empress. She stood in the Batcave like she belonged there, and in a way she did. This is not about you, beloved, she said. It's about the future, his. I told her Damien had chosen, that he stayed because he wanted to. She didn't argue. She smiled, and that's when I knew the real plan was already in motion. The League didn't just want Damien. They wanted Gotham, not to destroy it, to rule it. They believed the city was sick, that it needed the same discipline Damien had been raised with. They saw my war as unfinished. They came in waves, assassins in alleys, snipers on rooftops, poison in the reservoirs. And through it all, Damien stood at my side. He fought them, turned on his lineage, made a choice, not because I asked, because he believed in what we were doing. That was the moment I knew he wasn't just a son, he was mine. The war ended with a duel. Raz and I, sword against sword, tradition, ceremony, blood. I defeated him, didn't kill him, didn't need to. Talia took Damien's hand afterward, asked one last time. He looked at her, at me, at the cave, and said, I already have a family. They left, not defeated, but changed, and for now, at peace. But the League doesn't forget, and neither do I. I knew it was coming. The Joker had been quiet too long. And when he's quiet, that's when you start to worry. He didn't want chaos this time. He wanted control. He called it the end game. It started with laughter, not on the streets, in the hospitals. Nurses, patients, doctors, all infected, eyes wide, grins frozen, voices echoing that same unnatural laugh. A new toxin, stronger, refined. He released it in the water supply, in the air. Gotham began to turn on itself. Neighbors attacking neighbors, lovers killing each other with smiles on their faces. It wasn't just a gas anymore, it was an ideology. I called in the entire family: Dick, Tim, Jason, Barbara, Damien, even Batwoman, even enemies I wouldn't normally trust. We built a quarantine, fought to contain the panic. But the Joker, he had already planned the punchline. He broke into the cave, not the manor, the cave. He knew everything, where we slept, where we healed, where we kept the trophies. And he left a message on the monitor wall, a photo of me and my parents, crossed out. He didn't want to kill Gotham, he wanted to kill me through it, make me question the mission, make me laugh at the futility of it all. He wanted to be the man who proved that hope was a lie. We faced off on the rooftop of Arkham Asylum. He told me he'd created a backup plan, a virus coded to my DNA. If I died, the city died with me. If you kill me, he said, you kill them. I didn't blink. You think I don't have contingencies? Then I revealed the countermeasure. His virus, disabled, weeks ago. He laughed, not the manic laugh, a genuine one. You actually outplayed me. You finally got the joke. He lunged. We fought. It wasn't acrobatics. It wasn't theater. It was raw, ugly, final. We both bled. We both broke. And in the end, we both fell. The building collapsed. And for a time, we were both gone. There was no funeral, no body, no grave, just silence, and a city holding its breath. They said Batman was dead. Some believed it. Some didn't. The bat signal stayed dark. The rooftops were quieter, but the fear didn't go away, because in Gotham, fear never dies. It just finds a new mask. Dick put on the cowl, not because he wanted to, because he had to. He knew the symbol couldn't disappear, not when the city was still bleeding. He wore it well, moved differently than I did. Lighter, more human. And Gotham responded. Criminals whispered that maybe Batman had never left, that maybe he was something more than one man. Tim, Barbara, Damien, they all kept the work alive. Each of them took pieces of what I left behind and shaped it into something new. They didn't ask, what would Bruce do? They asked, what should we do? And in that they grew stronger. Jason even helped, sometimes, his own way. Quiet, unseen, maybe guilt, maybe redemption. Alfred, he kept the manor, kept the cave clean, talked to me like I was still there. Maybe part of me was, in the shadows, in the silence, in the mission they all carried forward. I watched from a distance, healing, waiting. The world thought I was gone, and for a while, I was. But watching them, seeing what they became, I realized something. Maybe Batman isn't a man anymore. Maybe he's a legacy, one born in grief, raised in fire tempered by hope. And if I ever returned, it wouldn't be because Gotham needed me. It would be because I needed it. I didn't plan to survive. Not the fall, not the aftermath, not the silence, but I did. Barely. I woke up in the wreckage, broken ribs, fractured shoulder, fractured purpose. Joker's body was gone. No sign of him. Just blood and laughter echoing in the debris. They thought I was dead, the world did. And for once, I let them. I disappeared into the cracks of the world. No suit, no cowl, no Wayne. Just a man with nothing but scars and time. I wandered. Not as a hero, not as a symbol, just as a question. Who was I without the mission? Without the fear? Without him? I traveled. Quiet cities, silent hills, forgotten roads. I saw people who didn't know my name, didn't know Gotham, didn't know the Bat. And in that stillness, I found something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not comfort. Not safety. Just the absence of war. I helped where I could. Quietly. No cape. No signal. A runaway boy in the north. A stolen car in the south. A woman too afraid to speak until someone simply listened. And slowly, the rage inside me quieted. The need to control, to dominate, to punish. It gave way to something else. Understanding. I had built the Batman to save a city. But somewhere along the way I forgot that saving didn't always mean fighting. Sometimes it meant standing still, letting others rise, trusting them to carry what you started. And they had. Dick, Tim, Damien, Barbara, Jason. Each of them had become something more than a partner. They had become better, because I finally stepped away, because I finally let go. But peace isn't permanent, and neither am I. One day, a boy in a cape will fall, a city will scream, and a shadow will need to return, not to lead, but to remind. The message came encoded, a signal only I would recognize, buried in a frequency no one should have remembered. Tim's code, a simple phrase, the bat is breaking again. I was already on my way back. The world had changed while I was gone. New enemies, old wounds reopened. Gotham was trying to hold itself together but barely. Nightwing was stretched thin. Red Hood had gone silent. Robin was pushing himself beyond reason. The city needed something. Not just a protector, a foundation. When I returned to the cave, it was almost like I'd never left. Dusty, but intact. Alfred had kept it as it was. Suit sealed. Terminal quiet. The chair turned slightly away as if waiting. I didn't say anything when I walked in. Didn't need to. I just stood there, let the silence settle. Then, I opened the case, put the suit on. It felt heavier, not from age, from memory. I stepped into Gotham for the first time in what felt like years. The air hadn't changed, still thick, still hungry. But the city didn't flinch, because it knew me. I didn't reclaim the symbol. I reminded it what the symbol meant. I didn't fight every night, didn't patrol every hour. I let the others lead. Nightwing had earned it. So had Tim. So had Damian. I was there for the moments that mattered, the fractures that could collapse the whole system. I was no longer its guardian. I was its spine. And Gotham stood straighter again. People still whispered about my return. Some said it was a myth, a stunt, a story to scare the criminals. I let them believe what they wanted, because it was never about me. It was always about the idea, and that idea had returned, not to take the spotlight, just to hold the line. One last time. I always knew there would be an end. Not the dramatic kind. Not fire and fanfare. Just a point where the night no longer belonged to me. I'm older now. I feel it in the joints, in the breath between rooftops, in the pause before throwing a punch. It's not weakness. It's wisdom, and I've learned to let go, but not without preparing for what comes next. I didn't just train replacements. I raised leaders. Dick more than Nightwing. He's a symbol of hope now. The one who looks up instead of down. The one who reminds people that light still belongs in Gotham. Tim, brilliant, composed. He sees patterns I miss. He'll outthink every villain before they even move. Barbara, Oracle, Batgirl, strategist. The spine of the network. When the city needs coordination, she's already 5 steps ahead. Jason. Well, Jason walks his own path. But he's learning, still burning. But not just to destroy, now to protect. And Damian. He might be the most dangerous. Because he's me with a future. He fights with purpose. But he questions. And that makes him stronger than I ever was at his age. I didn't build a legacy to be remembered. I built it so I could leave. And not worry. I've started recording everything. Files, cases, fail-safes, messages they'll only see if something happens to me. Not because I don't trust them, because I do. Enough to give them the truth. Enough to say goodbye without saying it out loud. Alfred sees it too. He watches me a little longer when I return from patrol. Offers tea without asking. Cleans the suit with a little more care. He knows. The cave is quieter these days. Not empty. Just still. I find myself there sometimes alone. Looking up at the suits, at the memory of the boy I was. And I whisper the same thing every time. You did what you could. And that was enough. It wasn't a war, not a bomb, not some world-ending threat. It was a quiet night. The sky was clear, no gunfire in the alleys, no screams echoing from the docks. Just a city breathing, because it finally could. I knew, not because of pain or weakness, but because for the first time in decades, I felt peace, real peace. No plan, no patrol. Just the absence of urgency. I walked the city that night. No cape, no mask, just Bruce Wayne. I moved through Crime Alley, the Monarch Theater, the rooftops of the East End. Every step a memory, every breath a reminder. This city broke me, rebuilt me, shaped me, and I shaped it, with every criminal stopped, every child saved. Every person who looked up and believed the dark could protect them. I stopped at the rooftop of the GCPD. The bat signal was dark. Gordon was long retired, his daughter running point now. She didn't need to light it anymore. They had each other. Still, I turned it on, one last time. It hummed, glowed, lit the clouds above like a promise, and then, I shut it down. No need for a call. I was already there. I left the suit in the cave, hung it like a soldier lays down his sword. No ceremony, no farewell, just a breath, a final step away from the shadow, because I knew they were ready. They all were, and I was finally free. If you're hearing this, then it means the mission is no longer mine to carry. And that's all right, because I didn't build this to last forever. I built it so that someone else could. I was never a god, never a savior. I was a boy in an alley who made a promise to the night, and then spent a lifetime keeping it. I'd been called a myth, a symbol, a warning, a monster. But in the end, I was just a man who refused to let fear win. To those I've fought beside, Dick, you are what I could never be. Open, light-filled, trusted by everyone. You made Nightwing more than a name. You made it a path. Barbara, you were always the sharpest voice in the room. You turned tragedy into power. And you never let us forget what justice sounds like. Tim, you're the mind that will keep the mission evolving, the one who sees the threads even I miss. Never doubt how essential you are. Jason, I failed you once, but you came back with fire and you've used it to shield others. Redemption isn't a destination, it's what you live every day. Damien, my son, you carry the darkness, yes, but you've learned to temper it with purpose. You are the future, not because of your lineage, but because of your choice. To Gotham, you were never gentle, never kind, but you were home, and I loved you in my own way through every bruise, every rooftop, every silent night. And to whoever listens after all this, you don't have to wear a cape. You don't have to fight in the shadows. You just have to stand up when others won't. That's what makes you worthy. That's what makes you a protector. The suit is only cloth. The symbol, just ink, but the idea, the belief that one voice, one hand, one decision matters, that never dies. So if there's one thing I leave behind, let it be this. You are not powerless, not in the dark, not ever. The world will fall again, and someone, somewhere will rise. Not because they want to, because they must. Just like I did. This was Bruce Wayne. This was Batman. And this was my story.